Hey guys, hi babies. And I don't even have an episode number for this. We're going to just put this in the bonus episode category because there's some things I'm going to do with some bonus episodes that I'll reveal a little later. But it is February 2nd, 2021. It feels good not to say 2020, honey. And as the Black community knows, it is the second day into Black History Month. And I know on my timeline, I'm sure it's on y'all's, you can clearly see the radiant energy of being Black and how rich our culture is. And I was always planning to come on here and do an episode like this, and we're going to get into what this is shortly. But I'm really excited. So basically, I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. I wanted to come on here and talk about two books. One I finished, which is Black Fortunes. I finished this one. And the second book I'm still reading. This is called Franchise: The Golden Arches in Black America. So over the course of the pandemic, the Madam C.J. Walker series came out on Netflix, and we all remember that. So remember, like, shortly after it aired, a bunch of people gave feedback on it and was saying how some of the information was incorrect. Like, we don't really know Annie Malone's story. Madam C.J. Walker got her start from her, all of that. And so when I hear information like that, or when I've seen a series or several different people say, like, this ain't right, and they're starting a whole forum on it and everything, I was like, let me get to the root of the issue. Let me research myself. So I was on the internet and I was just looking up, I think it was just like typical information on just Annie Malone's story as a whole. So I went down a rabbit hole and I started finding some books. So I'm like, okay, the first book I came across was Black Fortunes. So Black Fortunes was listed on, I keep shortening it. It's Black Fortunes. So I found it on a web page in addition to a few other books that were beneficial for Black history, like Black Titan and a few other things. So I went to Amazon, looked up the price for this book. I purchased this just to get me started. And I'm glad I purchased Black Fortunes first to get me started, because I feel like if you want a crash course on very impactful Black history, this is the book I would recommend somebody start off with. So I purchased this, and then later that week in the mail, or maybe it was the following week, I had gotten some more books. So to my surprise, Desmond had went ahead and ordered me a few other books. So I was really, I was really interested in digging into this book just off of what I read online. So before I dig into the details of both of them, I'm going to start with Black Fortunes, and I'm going to read you guys what it's mentioned on the back. I don't know the correct term of what that is. Just, it's going to give you a briefing and an understanding. So it says, between 1830 and 1927, as the last generation of Blacks born into slavery was reaching maturity, a small group of daring men and women broke new ground to attain the highest levels of financial success. Black Fortunes is the astonishing, untold story, which is true, of America's first Black millionaires, self-made entrepreneurs who endured incredible challenges to amass their personal fortunes, including an adventurer, a landowner, a self-taught chemist, a millionaire's mistress, and a school teacher, and a flamboyant rebel. I'm getting tongue-tied. Inspiring and surprising, Black Fortunes illuminates as never before the birth of the Black business titan. Even though, I don't know if you can see it here, like, even though that paragraph is so short, it says so much. Like, this was like a eye-opener for me. And Emory don't really, like, before the pandemic, Emory don't be really reading books. Like, I would read enough of things. Well, let me rephrase it. I never sought to read books, like, as a form of a hobby or anything. Like, sometimes you be sneaking and, people be having Zane books, stuff like that. We grown on here. So, like, reading little things like that in like elementary school, reading Junie B. Jones and everything. But, and also it helps who I'm connected to. It helps who I'm married to. Desmond reads, and then Lana reads like nobody's business. And I definitely feel like Harley is a reader as well, because she reads in Babel language to herself, the books that we have. So when I started reading this, and I was like, okay, let me kind of get into it, because what I didn't want was to get a book that was so facts that it didn't have like a great storyline to it. Like, I didn't want to feel like I was reading a book in a history class, and I think that was a fear of mine, or like just me not wanting, not a fear, me just not wanting to read information altogether, because I felt like it was going to equate to social studies. Baby, this gonna get you your life, okay? This book here, so the years that these events take place starts in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and it just progresses as far as it can go until these people pass away. Well, till these Black millionaires pass away. So before I read this book, I never knew about these things. I never, like, you hear about Black Wall Street and what took place with Black Wall Street, but Black Fortune gives you an understanding of how Black Wall Street was created. Also speaking on Mary Ann Pleasant and how my girl had the bag and moved to the West Coast during the gold rush. And honey, like, she was lending money to people for their businesses and to keep them afloat. And then when she would go collect her coin, she was drawing interest. Like, for me to know where I'm going and for me to be an entrepreneur, I have to study people who look like me. It's just a natural thing. So I can't really go somewhere. I can't really progress and be active in my community without truly understanding the foundation that was set before me. Because let's be real, Black entrepreneurship did not just start in the past 10 years. Like, I know it's a common thing right now, and especially it was a high influx of entrepreneurship for the pandemic. And that is amazing, because people were able to sit home and really give time to nurture their talent. So with reading this book, I'm just so enlightened. Like, there was a man, Robert Reed Church. Robert Reed was the child of a slave woman, Black woman, and her master. So she had 2 children by him. Correct me if I'm wrong. But also, before I dig in a little more, I'm going to leave the information for these books so you all can read them as well, because I'm not going to give everything away, because it would not do you any justice. It will not be nearly as impactful if I just told you, like, you have to read these. So Robert Reed Church, so his mom, she had, I believe, 2 boys. One of them was like severely ill or something like that. So basically Robert went on to work with his father on his steamboat. Like, this boat was bringing cotton from here and there. White people would be on there. He was a chef. Like, Robert was a mover and shaker. And even though his father was white, his father made sure that even though he wasn't as affectionate with him, like, in the public, because, like, he really didn't want it to be known, like, that his son was Black. So they get to a portion, and I'm gonna hold out certain information, but basically Robert, I want to say the town was Memphis. And this is why yes, I'm right. Oh. Okay, we back. I just had to get my facts correct just to make sure. Anyway, so Robert was in Memphis, and he was an entrepreneur there, making a great living. So there was an epidemic in Memphis. So basically yellow fever, like, from the mosquitoes and everything, and people were dying off at like a massive amount. Like, people were leaving the area, And Robert still had faith in the area. So even while everyone was leaving, he stayed. So what that meant was people were moving away and they vacated their homes. So what he did was he bought up the real estate in that area. And he was like, this town is going to flourish. Like, it's going to be something here. So I'm not going to leave. My guy bought up houses. I think he bought up a few commercial properties as well. Y'all. So the city came back on its feet. Like, things turned around. And city officials had to come to my guy to get some money to help fund projects for the city. Okay? This is not in our textbooks, baby. And like, I'm just so excited saying this. Like y'all, do y'all know who the fuck we are? Like, I'm not even a quarter of the way through. Okay. So basically, city officials had to come to him, to help fund projects, to revitalize the city and everything. So when people start moving back in town, remember the properties that I told you that he purchased, like the residential? Oh, they had to run my man his bread. They had to pay him rent. So I think he also had like a hotel. It's so like Robert Church is that nigga. Like, he was absolutely with the shit. Like, he was beating police officers. He was calling white folks out. Like, this was a man that was about his shit and willing to live and die by his cause. And that just struck a chord with me because it just, well, not struck a chord. It really made my soul feel really good because even in the times like where he was like freshly, or his mom was a slave. Like, he won't even, maybe 40 years, 50 years removed from slavery. And he putting in work like this. Like, y'all, there's nothing but space and opportunity for us. Like, I'm giving you one person that they talk about in this book. They also speak on Annie Malone. And it was very enlightening to hear her story and how she got her start, because we always hear about Madam C.J. Walker. And especially because I'm in the beauty industry, I had to look up this information because we always gonna give Madam C.J. Walker her roses. Like, she's that bitch. Like, she paved part of the way. But Annie Malone she set the foundation for Madam C.J. Walker. She just had a hobby of doing hair. She enjoyed it. She said that's what she wanted to do. Her sister didn't take her seriously. And then she had a homegirl who I think she got burned from, I think it was like lye or hot comb. It was something, she had scalp damage. So Annie was like, I'll fix it for you if you can bring me home a textbook from school, because Annie had gotten sick and she had, I forget what she had come down with, but she had to stay home. So it was like, I'll do your hair if you bring me this textbook. I could be getting the series of events mixed up. Again, that's why you should go read it for yourself. So my girl went, they knew an herbalist. So back in that time, they would contact a lot of herbalists for healing, for illnesses. You know how that goes, all natural route. So she went to the herbalist because she had to pick up something. Anyway, around the house, I don't know if someone was sick, but she asked her, like, do you have anything for like burns or scarrings on the scalp? So she was like, the herbalist was like, yeah, use this, this, and this. So also when the girl brought her the textbook back, it was like a chemistry book. She started researching and reading, and she saw that it was a particular product that was used on animals. I forget which animal it was, like if they had suffered like hair loss. So she went down to the drugstore and she started concocting her own products, and then she started treating her friend's hair. So she realized, like, no, I really got a gift. And you guys, like, I'm just like, I'm going through so many emotions over here just because I'm proud, but I'm also pissed. Because like when they say like we have to dig and do our research, like we really have to dig and do our research. And I would say, like, when you read this book, it's very interesting because they intertwine the characters together. So if you're reading on one character, they'll bring up another series or another. Basically, if two things are going on within the same year, they kind of like have them float within the same era. so you can kind of piece your information together. And I think there are a few instances where some of these characters like intermingle and kind of talk and hang with each other. This is so empowering because it's like a good dose of messy tea, because they talk about this black woman who was a mistress with this white man, honey, and she was stripping and all types of she was getting into some frisky business type activities. But to read this book and feel empowered was like all that I needed to like get me started to want to read more. So now this next book, this one really like this book, and I'm not, where am I at? I'm a little almost close to halfway, because this is not a book I feel like I can fly through, because it's so much. Yeah, you can see where I'm at, because there's so much information in here. Like I find myself rereading a few things to make sure I understand what it's saying and fully digesting the material. So I'm going to read you the briefing from here. All right. Again, this is Franchise the Golden Arches in Black America. An estimated 1/3 of all American adults eat something from a fast food restaurant every day. Millions start their mornings with paper wrapped English muffin breakfast sandwiches, order burritos hastily secured in foil for lunch, and end their evenings with extra value dinners consumed in cars. But while people of all ages and backgrounds enjoy and depend on fast food, it does not mean the same thing to each of us. For African Americans, as acclaimed historian Marcia, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing her name, Chatelain reveals in Franchise, fast food is a source of both despair and power, and a battlefield of which the fight for racial justice has been waged since the 1960s. On the one hand, we rightly blame fast food for the rising rates of obesity and diabetes among Black Americans, and fast food restaurants are viewed as symbols of capitalism's disastrous effects on our nation's most vulnerable citizens. Yet, at the same time, Chatelain shows fast food companies, and McDonald's in particular, have represented a source of economic opportunity and political power. After Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination in 1968, many activists turned to entrepreneurship as a means to achieve equality. Civil rights leaders, fast food companies, Black capitalists, celebrities, and federal bureaucrats began an unlikely collaboration in the belief that the franchising of fast food restaurants by Black citizens in their own neighborhoods could improve the quality of Black life. Equipped with federal loans and utterly committed to the urban centers in which they would open their little sites of hope, Black franchise pioneers achieved remarkable success by the late 2000s. Black franchise I'm gonna just stop here because I'm getting tongue-tied, but you guys get the gist. I hope I didn't lose you. So basically, in short, this book talks about, like, we heard the story with McDonald's and like Supersize Me and all the shit about how McDonald's is unhealthy and everything. And growing up, I've always noticed that McDonald's has always been populated in like impoverished areas, like the hood. And I can't even remember. I just feel like I've loosely heard how McDonald's has made money off of Black people. But to break down the DNA of the business and how it got its start and how it led to Black franchise owners getting a foot in the door, but also being screwed over at the same time, when they say this country has been making money off of us, it ain't just from slavery. And before I even started recording, I naturally assumed, I didn't look at the author, I didn't look at anything. I don't ask me how I won't pay attention to the author. I just saw what the book was about and I grabbed it. But to find out a Black woman wrote this book. Okay, so basically, at the start of McDonald's was owned by the McDonald's brothers. But then I think Ray Kroc was the new owner. And he was looking for the best return on his profit. So consulting with someone, they recommended that he focus on real estate. So for every McDonald's that's around, he owns that land because that's how you make the money, okay? Outside of profits of a brick and mortar building. So he didn't really give two fucks that racial injustice was going on in his restaurants. Long as he was getting his coin, he had his hands off. So they were boycotting. You know how they were doing the sit-ins with the diners and everything in Greensboro 4. So the same group of people decided, let's boycott, McDonald's, because at this point they weren't doing they didn't have it to where you could eat in. It was just like drive-throughs, I believe. So once Martin Luther King, so they were fighting for equality for Black people to be able to eat at McDonald's, but also the issue that they were running into is wondering if Black people could afford McDonald's. So once Martin Luther King died, the riots went crazy. Chicago, so the start of this book kind of roots in Chicago and speaks on how there was a Black man who had a managerial position with McDonald's and he got promoted, and they wanted to have him hire Black people to be franchise owners for McDonald's. So any local McDonald's that you see, or I'm just going to assume, like, especially if it's in the hood, it's probably a Black person who owns that, and that's probably why the ice cream machine don't be working, but we're gonna get into that. So when Martin Luther King died, shit went crazy. It was riots everywhere, and initially it was white franchise owners who were working at these McDonald's, and they would flee town, no different than how they would flee their houses and everything, like when Black people was pissed because they just didn't want anything to do with us or the situation, like they didn't cause it. So they were saying, why not, if we're already going to be in the Black neighborhood, wouldn't it be better for the franchise owner to be Black? So with that, it'll probably be less violence because they see someone who looks like them. So what they were doing, because we were honestly the reason that kept McDonald's afloat. So what they were doing was they were hiring a bunch of Black franchisees at a rapid rate. I'm talking waiving franchise fees and everything. Like one of the fees that they mentioned in the book was like $150,000. Now this was like in the 1960s, I believe, or the 1950s. So they were waiving $150K. They at one point in time, people were having to leave to go to Hamburger University to learn how to run a franchise business. But because it was so many people coming out of Chicago at the time, they was like, we just gonna put Hamburger University in Chicago. So all these Black people are thinking or feeling, I'm not gonna say think, feeling that I have a fair opportunity. I'm about to be a franchise owner. This is really going to bring wealth to my family. I'm in a position of leadership. But they were also getting blackballed because in those locations that were in the hood, the equipment was terrible. They weren't sending people out to maintain it. And then also Black people needed funding. So what was happening is they would get silent partners. And basically the silent partners were supposed to fund any mechanical issues that was going on with the equipment. Well, that wasn't happening. So you have all of that going on. And there's a Black man in particular who was known in Chicago. He had a barbershop, but he was also in not a higher arena, but he was also well known by certain distinguished men and higher ups in Chicago as well. So he was getting it in the trenches, and he also was able to pull weight, economically and things like that. So he was a perfect candidate and people respected him. And, it was gang affiliation and all that going on. But because he had stake in his barbershop and people understood and knew who he was, there wasn't any gang violence or anything going on with that. So within the first year, with all of that and having technical difficulties with his equipment, sales being down, riots just finished happening, this man surpassed the profit goals they had in place for that location. So what started happening was the higher ups at McDonald's was like, let's get some more Black franchisees on these McDonald's locations. So what was happening was Black people were looking at that as an opportunity, for wealth and, to take care of their family. But still, corporate America with McDonald's and the white officials still had a grip on how much progress they really could make. And then there's also another story in here about a Black man who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was trying to open a chain of fried chicken restaurants because there wasn't too many people in that area. Like, it wasn't oversaturated or anything like that. So he thought he had a hand and opportunity in it. And so he opened one in Harlem, and it just didn't pan out well. He wasn't able to get the funding that he needed because it was a whole thing with black capitalism and low funding, and we still getting low funding, honey. But basically he ended up becoming a franchise owner for McDonald's, and he was in Florida. And of course, you know, the same storyline, the equipment was poor. Him as well as the man in Chicago, they were handymen, so they were fixing their own equipment. Excuse me, it wasn't for McDonald's that I'm not telling y'all their names on purpose. It wasn't for McDonald's that he worked for. It was Burger King that he was a franchise owner for in Florida. Yeah, so he turned the numbers around for that business as well. But y'all don't want to know what the gag is. You know that slogan, have it your way. How about my guy? How about my man was the creator of that? Where's my credit? Where are our reparations? Like, and I would say this, I apologize if I was talking and mumbling over my words, but I had a lot of information to get out, to say, just because I'm very passionate about Black people. I love Black people. I love us. We have our ways, but we are resilient. Like, we are so resilient. And I'm not halfway through reading this book, you guys. And it's just so empowering and disheartening in the same time, because we're always handed, we're given a shitty hand. And we be making that shit royal. Like, royal. They know. Okay, I'm gonna get off on a tangent if I keep going. We're gonna stay happy and high spirits because it's Black History Month. And I like to under promise and over deliver. It was on my heart to record this episode. I already planned to come on here and talk about these books that I have been reading, just so I can kind of give you guys a crash course on what they're about, and hopefully it lights a fire in you and make you want to go read. And I have a lot more at home that I'll be digging into, but I'm just so proud of us. I'm so proud. I love being Black. Can't nobody take care of Black people like Black people. I probably, if it's relevant to whatever episode, I'm going to say that on every episode. That's why we have to be very calculated about how we handle one another. We not all have a similar story, but there should be one common goal for us. And protesting and things of that nature and rioting, like, that's one way to express the frustration and the anger that we have of not being respected. And it's not even wanting equality. Just leave us the hell alone. And yes, protesting and being aggressive does get people's attention, but the way to make it stick is to educate yourself. Like, we need vertical integration. We have to work together. Protesting can only go but so far if we're not trying to get ourselves together financially, and just really reach out and help one another. I thought about something. Well, I think about it constantly because I heard it on a podcast. And it was basically someone saying, like, and it was a Black woman. It made a lot of sense. It was like, you don't have to be friends with someone to do business with someone, because at the end of the day, the dollar is green. And I think we Black females sometimes we could be a little catty. We could be a little petty. And sometimes I'll just sit and reflect on my thoughts. And I'm just like, we'll quickly be like, I'm not supporting that business because blah, 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 blah. Or I don't want to work with her because she's such and such and such and such. Yeah. But how are we going to grow our dollar? If we all got a problem with how somebody do something, like, talk to that person privately. Don't air that shit out publicly. Talk to that person privately. y'all don't even have to be friends after that. But it's like, listen, we got to get this money together. Like, we can't afford to stop networking and stop working with people because of somebody said something that you forgot about a whole 3 months later. Like, you don't even know what the issue was, because white people have their shit too, and they be catty with each other behind closed doors, but they understand the impact of that green dollar bill. And I think sometimes that's where we as a culture deal with that hiccup. So we just have to love on one another. And me being insightful with myself, reading these books, doing my work, during this pandemic and everything, it really has me looking at things with a more healthier mindset. Like, this is a collective goal. The change can only start with you. If you're not doing your work and, taking your time to be the best that you can be, we can't grow. So it's everyone's job. That's why it was my job to take my time to read these books. Because if I didn't read these books, I wouldn't have the opportunity to share this with you all. And the stuff that I'm reading in the franchise book, Desmond, my husband, is like a walking encyclopedia. Like, it's literally a sport sometimes for me to like try to bring stuff to him that he don't know about. So when I'm reading, and I'll pause and I'll ask him like, hey, did you know such and such? And he was like, no, I ain't know that. So I know that. Like, I didn't know it, he ain't know it. Who else don't know it? But you know it now. So what are you going to do with this information? I'm sure, I'm going to assume this is on Audible. Some of my books I have to sit down and read because I just like to touch them. But there are also some other ones that I'll probably read through Audible. So that's all I had to say. Happy Black History Month. Happy Black Excellence Month. And I think I'm going to come on here and probably do another one on some documentaries that Desmond and I have been watching. Because, baby, like, I feel like once I have been reading these books, I want to know everything about being Black and what came before me. Like, I don't want that generic shit no more. Like, that surface, it's not even surface level, but I felt like the information that they were giving us was to pacify us and kind of hold us over, like, yeah, here's your information. But it's like, yeah, niggas know that. Like, they've been through that. Let's talk about what was taking place before Martin Luther King. Like, these folks in this book. And let me tell you something about Black people. When we get money, we are very lavish with it. Like, the cover of this book, they got on damn furs, like, dressed into the nines. Just go read these books, y'all, please. I hope I wasn't long-winded. I hope my information genuinely got out to you all. And thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for all of the feedback that you guys give. This podcast is really, really fun for me. And I just like to run my mouth. So I love you all. Be intentional. Let's celebrate. Let's lather on each other a little more with that rich Black excellence. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Love you. Bye.